Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you all are here this evening with us, uh, joining us to protect our democracy, to center the voices of the people who are most impacted by the policies that are in place right now. And I am going to pull up a reading that I actually wrote for the Poor People's Campaign. No, it's a little bit hectic in my house right now because it is crazy hair day tomorrow, and one of my children is dyeing the other child's hair pink. So that's cool. So hold on one moment. What are you doing? Okay. So I invite you all, as you are able, considering what's going on around your house this evening, to join us in a moment of quiet prayer and reflection to start our time together. I invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze as you're willing and able to do so, to come fully present into this space. Holy One of many names and beyond naming, we know that the fight against tyranny, oppression, fascism, hate, and division is not a new fight, but a struggle that goes back to the very beginning of the nation. There are those who would use these institutions to keep poor and marginalized folks disempowered, silent, and struggling. And we know that when we live into our highest ideals, these same institutions can be tools of affirmation, affirming the inherent worth and dignity of all people. With the grace and strength of divine love to carry us forward in the struggle, we who have been pushed to the margins won't be silent anymore. Oh, Spirit of life and love, fortify us with the wisdom and tenacity of our ancestors to continue to build a new way towards the promise that's written into the founding documents of our nation. A nation where all of us are created as equals and are endowed with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Amen, Ashe, and may it be so. And now I will turn it over to our co-chairs, Michael and Linnell.
Thank you, Dana.
Good evening, everyone. I will be doing a brief history about the Poor People's Campaign. Dr. Martin Luther King played a pivotal role in the Poor People's Campaign, which he announced in November 1967 at a staff retreat for the Southern Leadership Conference. He envisioned a campaign as a revolution of values in America, aiming to unite people across and against the triplets of evil: militarism, racism, and economic justice. Dr. King emphasized the need to move from the era of civil rights to human rights, advocating to a revolutionary movement that would raise fundamental questions about our society. He planned for an initial group of 2,000 people to descend upon Washington, D.C., southern states, and northern cities to meet the government officials. Their demands included jobs, unemployment, insurance, a fair minimum wage, and the education of poor adults and children to lift their self-esteem. He sought out grassroots leaders of diverse communities, including Native American, Latino, white, Black communities, to build an unprecedented cross-racial coalition. The coalition aimed to transform the nation by addressing issues such as welfare rights, treaty rights, housing, healthcare, livable wages. Dr. King supported the 1968 Memphis sanitation strike, recognizing it as an issue of both economic and racial justice. He delivered speeches, led marches, advocated for the rights of striking workers. Despite violence that occurred during the strike, Dr. King vowed to return to Memphis to lead a peaceful demonstration on March the 28th. He delivered his final speech. I've been to the mountaintop at the Mason Temple on April the 3rd, 1968. Tragically, Dr. King was assassinated the following evening of April the 4th, 1968, at the Lorraine Hotel. His death sparked national outrage, and the strike intensified. But after Dr. King's assassination, the city of Memphis recognized the union, AFME, and increased the sanitation wages. The legislative impact of the Poor People's Campaign was profound, far-reaching. The campaign with Dr. King and the SCLC aimed to address systemic racism, again, economic injustice in the United States. One of the most significant legislative impacts was the passage of the key civil rights law. The persistence and efforts of activists compelled Congress to enforce the 14th Amendment protection and enact crucial legislation. These acts include Civil Rights Act of 1964, Voting Rights of 1965, the Housing Act, Fair Housing Act of 1968, passed. After all of these, they were enacted, but none of them were actually being implemented properly. So they passed shortly after Dr. King's assassination. This act aimed to eliminate discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. These legislative achievements have shaped national values and policies for over 60 years, despite facing sustained backlash. The SCLC decided to continue the Poor People's Campaign under the leadership of Reverend Ralph Abernathy. Over 5,000 people marched to DC that day. Demonstrators built Resurrection City, a temporary settlement of tents, shacks on the Mall of Washington, D.C., bravely facing rain, mud for over 30 days. Summer heat, protesters stayed for over a month and more. Demonstrators made daily pilgrimage to various federal agencies to protest the demand and economic justice. Mrs. Coretta Scott King formed the first wave of women demonstrators the following day. The campaign faced challenges, including the assassination of Robert Kennedy, whose wife attended the Mother's Day opening April the 12th, 1968. Resurrection City, out of respect for the campaign, the funeral procession passed through Resurrection City that day. These achievements, though modest, demonstrated the campaign's commitment to addressing immediate needs and improving the lives of the poor. Reverend Abernathy felt that the concessions were insufficient. The Poor People's Campaign experienced a shift in allies and opponents due to the influence of the media. This demonstrates the significant role that media plays in shaping public perception and influencing the outcome of social and political movements. It is important for the movements to be aware of the power of the media and to strategize accordingly in order to achieve their goals, and the use of misinformation by the FBI to undermine the efforts and marginalized groups is a dangerous tactic that can hinder progress towards social justice. It is important that these agencies be held accountable for disseminating inaccurate information and ensure the marginalized voices to be given a platform to be heard. Dr. King's vision for the Poor People's Campaign and Resurrection City was to create a movement of racial grassroots leadership that could effectively challenge the system of poverty, racism, and war. They were opposing the poor, he believed. That this movement needed to focus on meeting the immediate needs of the poor rather than supporting established leaders of specific legislation. And even after 57 years, we are still in the same challenge of building and sustaining this type of leadership to create a broader social movement. Thank you. You will now hear from our other tri-chair, Mike Puskar.
Thank you so much, Linnell. So back in 2018, the campaign was revitalized with co-chairs Bishop William J. Barber II and Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris as the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for more revival. The Maryland Poor People's Campaign began with national in 2018. As a movement for the poor, we lift up those impacted, just like Linnell and myself. We provide political education, including historical and legislative matters. And we strive to make the very best use of social media, going beyond the 3 major platforms. And we should always start with, end with, and have music in our hearts throughout. So the arts are a major component of the PPC. One of the first major events held by Maryland PPC was a hearing in Baltimore where gubernatorial and congressional candidates were invited to hear impacted peoples and faith leaders speak. Last year, our biggest event was the rally in Annapolis on March 2nd, where impacted speakers testified and others spoke on issues facing us then, leading into the DC Assembly in June and then towards getting out the vote into November. Now, the issues are far more dire, and that is why we are meeting tonight. So I'm now going to hand this off to our guest, Liz McNichol, who's one of the chairs of the DC Poor People's Campaign.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Linnell. Kind of set the scene for why we're here tonight. I'm Liz McNichol, one of the co-chairs of the DC PPC, and I bring a welcome from Reverend Christopher Zacharias, who's the pastor at John Wesley AM Zion, and he is another co-chair. Like the Maryland group, our goal is to change the narrative about poverty and build power among poor and low wealth people in DC. And we do that by working with existing local groups, not creating a new thing in order to build this movement. DC is interesting situation being in the nation's capital. So we are both working locally to build DC's autonomy. We're the home of Congress, but we have no voice in Congress. And we have we have a local budget, which is under increasing attacks now from Congress, as well as all the challenges that we face, where we have a city that cares more about building a stadium than it cares about building housing for the unhoused in our city. So we'll work with a new group, Free DC, that's lobbying Congress to try to take back the power from Congress when they try to undo what we've done. We'll work with the Washington Interfaith Network and with clergies and communities all around the city. But at the same time, we're also supporting the National Poor People's Campaign. So I'm really happy to be here while you're teaching about the reports about the impact of federal actions on us in the city, but also all around the country, about poor and low-income people who will be impacted if the current Republican agenda is enacted. There's often events where Reverend Barber or Reverend Theo Harris will come to the city, and we have the honor of helping to support those events by showing up, but by being marshals and by spreading the word about what's happening. So I am really happy to see some of the members of the DC Poor People's Campaign, Angie, Audrey, others who are on this call tonight. And we really welcome, and Robin, thanks, welcome the opportunities to work together with Maryland, because this area is so, and together maybe we can get a Virginia campaign started too, and we'll get the whole DMV in action. So I just wanted to, say thank you for being here and tell you that on May 4th, we'll be having an in-person DC Poor People's Campaign meeting in a park in DC. You're all welcome. And we'll be kind of kicking off our actions for this year. And every first Wednesday at noon, the national campaign is holding Moral Witness Wednesdays at noon on the Capitol grounds, and we will be showing up and hope that you do too. These are hard times, but there's hope, and just being here with all of you gives me hope that we can lift the voices of poor and low-income people and build power and make a change. And I'm really excited to hear about the rest of the program. And thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Liz. And you brought up a good point that I omitted in my brief summary, is that, yes, we do all work with partner organizations, and that's a very important factor that we want to focus on in Maryland as well, with all the partners we have in Baltimore, Annapolis, and Montgomery, and so on. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over real quickly to our youngest member, Journey Glenn, who is Linnell's granddaughter, and she's going to lead us in song. As I said before, we always start with, stop with, and throughout have song in our hearts, which is actually something national musicologist Yara Allen taught us.
There are mean things happening in this land. There are mean things happening in this land. But the movement's going on, and the movement's going strong. There are mean things happening in this land. All those corporate puppets soar as the poor pay more and more. There are mean things happening in this land. There go the wealthy billionaires, debt and suffering everywhere. There are mean things happening in this land. Healthcare cuts are on the rise. The sick and poor are left to die. There are mean things happening in this land. To serve the Wall Street bottom line, our health and bodies are on the line. There are mean things happening in this land. Democracy is our right, and we won't give up the fight. There'll be good things happening in this land. When the dispossessed unite, the end of poverty is in sight. There'll be good things happening in this land. There'll be good things happening in this land.
Thank you so much, Journey. That was amazing. And we surely do have mean things happening in this land. And we're here today to discuss a lot of those mean things that are going on that we need to put an end to and rise above. So with that, I am turning this over to Rachel Buck, one of our state coordinators.
Journey, thank you for energizing us with that movement song. Now let's jump into the heart of this discussion. We will be covering where we are in this moment. The High Moral Stakes report, which you've just heard a little bit about, that was recently released by the Repairers of the Breach, and it highlights some proposed very deadly cuts to Medicaid, to food stamps, and other critical programs. So we're going to really dive into the details of that. And then we're going to end our evening together in breakout rooms and coming back and sharing all that we create together in those breakout rooms. So I'm pleased now to introduce Pastor Tillett to center us in this moment.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Tillett. I'm the pastor at Asbury Broadneck United Methodist Church in Annapolis, Maryland, and one of the leaders of the Maryland Poor People's Campaign. Thank you for joining us this evening. That song is a notable and appropriate segue. There are mean things happening in this land, so I'm going to just cover a few of those in the next several minutes. And just understand, as you see in the heading, that the crisis is now. This is not anything that we have to wait for any longer, or will Project 2025 says, well, they might do this or they might do that. It's here. It is upon us. So there's a frontal assault on poor people, on low-income people, and working class people that will affect our standard of living. There's a destruction of programs, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP, child and earned income tax credits, rental assistance, all the things that are necessary for some people just to keep one nostril above the waterline. And all of these things are under attack. So they can cut those programs and then turn around and say, oh, we've got money for tax cuts for billionaires. The crisis is now. There are mean things happening in this land. There's also a heightening of hatred and racism and racist attacks on minorities and immigrants and people of color, people being deported to essentially gulags in El Salvador, et cetera. And then they say, well, we sent them there by mistake, but we can't get them back. There are mean things happening in this land. There are attacks on our democracy, our voting rights. My hometown of Washington, D.C., our autonomy is under attack. Again, whenever the Republicans get a hold of Congress, they seem to say, oh, so now let's do some experiments on D.C. and mess with them. Attacks on D.C., worker safety. There's a reversing of progress on environmental protection, environmental justice, community health, and safety. And there's just a massive transfer of wealth in the process to transfer the money, the wealth from us, the lower 98, 99% economically, to the top 1%. And so that which means that the federal budget is essentially supported by people with less money, and the people with more money will pay little to nothing, as was stated by one billionaire. He felt as though his tax rate was lower than his secretary's tax rate. That makes no sense. And all of this while they're continuing to feed and expand the bloated defense budget and the war industry. And at this point, they're talking about getting up to closer to $1 trillion a year for the defense budget. And then there's just some concerns about what Donald Trump is doing to us, arresting and threatening people who criticize the government. which is, of course, completely contrary to the First Amendment rights that we are supposed to be able to enjoy to gather and to protest peacefully, right of a free press, which, of course, they are threatening and buying people off so that, for instance, the Washington Post is afraid to tell the truth anymore. Facebook and others are afraid to have fact checking anymore. Attacking the ability of our courts to protect people from abuses of power. And if the ruling comes out from a court they don't like, they then try to say, well, we need to impeach the judge. So therefore, crossing over in the, we're supposed to have a balance of powers between our judiciary, our executive, and our legislative. And if they get answers they don't like, he owns the legislative. We know that. He's not going to get any pushback from his party in Congress. But now their big concern is, well, we can't control the courts. Let's start impeaching people. That's not easy to do, but the fact that they're talking about it is concerning. And they also want to censor and attack journalists. Additionally, they're attempting to make it harder to vote and undermining confidence in our elections. And basically that means any election that doesn't go their way, they're going to scream fraud, even when it's not true. Allowing agencies and non-government actors to illegally obtain and share personal data. And so some of you are probably aware of the actions and activities of the co-president, Elon Musk, and his roving band of tech bros coming in and seizing and accessing data in our agencies and Social Security, et cetera. That they don't have the authority to do, yet they're doing it. And they're firing people who protect and enforce our civil rights. They're eliminating inspectors general who are there to hold and keep our federal agencies accountable. You fire the inspectors general, there's nobody there as a protection for we the people and for the work that those agencies are supposed to carry out. They're breaking union contracts illegally. They're eliminating vital jobs in service to everyday people. And then they'll turn around and say, see, we told you the government doesn't work. Well, you destroyed it. Of course, it's not working. And then they're defunding scientific and medical research and environmental safeguards. And some of you are probably aware that there's a measles outbreak in Texas right now. Why? Because, but a lot of people may not know about it because they are preventing agencies that used to report on those things from sharing that information. It almost seems as if there's a plot afoot to try and kill us, that we will just, from all of the things they are no longer going to allow to happen, we will suffer as a result of those decisions. And finally, censoring arts and attacking our cultural institutions. Kennedy Center is a major example of that. But of course, we're pushing back, and people who were going to perform there are now saying they're not coming. So they might find themselves in charge of something that doesn't have any programming. But they're trying that. They're trying to erase our celebrations and commitment to our diversity and our cultures and our histories. The original fabric and intent of our nation had been e pluribus unum, out of many, one. What is it now? But you know what? We will not surrender our rights, and we're going to resist and push back with every fiber of our being. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Pastor T, for those eye-opening remarks. Now that we are seeing, we will now hear from Ms. Marlene Hendler, who will give us her personal testimony on how various medical and disability issues and legislation are causing a problem. Then we will move into the report that will give us some data on that. So, Marlene, testify.
Hi, excuse me. Hello. My name is Marlene Hendler. I've been disabled since birth. I have what's called cerebral palsy, which is a central nervous muscle disorder. I also have 4 other conditions that I acquired later in life. But my father, who died in '96, spent most of my life working very hard to make sure that I had what I needed. He worked 3 jobs to make sure that he had money to take care of my needs and his family, even if that meant taking me for physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy 4 days a week. And now that he's no longer here, I've had to do quite a bit on my own without a lot of family support. And a lot of what I have to do is filling out paperwork and doing things over and over again on a regular basis. And right now, one of the things that I've had to do twice in the last year was to fill out some paperwork for a mortgage modification. My mortgage got all screwed up 8 years ago, and I've been fighting with the state for 8 years. And by the time I finally got through to somebody who was willing to look at that, they tried to put it back on me, saying it was my fault when it wasn't. It was theirs. I am in a roll-in program. I'm in a special program for first-time home buyers and people with disabilities. And I've also been put in what's called a roll-in program, which is an ADA accommodation, where any of the bills that I have to pay, along with what's normally covered in a mortgage, is added to the mortgage, so the mortgage company writes it out for me instead of me writing them. And the state tried to claim that they ended that program, which they cannot do because it's an ADA accommodation. People with disabilities should not have to fill out paperwork over and over and over again, like for paratransit certification, or whether you're in Baltimore, whether you're in Howard County, whether you're in Montgomery County. For Baltimore's mobility, I have to fill that out every 3 years. Howard County has me do it every 5 years. Howard County automatically renews me because they know that I'm eligible for it. I just have to go through the process in case they get audited. And then I don't know how often Montgomery County does it. But for those of us with permanent disabilities, we shouldn't have to redo paperwork over and over and over again. I mean, for my food stamp, I now have to apply for that every 6 months instead of once a year. And with the budget cuts that are coming down or that might come across, that affects people with disabilities in a drastic way, because if we lose our SNAP or our SNAPs are lowered, or the medical assistance cuts or Social Security cuts, that's going to drastically affect how people with disabilities live. If they try to take my MA away from me, I lose all the services that I get, because most of the services I receive, I have to have MA in order to be eligible for those services. And if I lose my medical assistance, I lose all the support that I have. My service coordinator, my support planner, any of the services that are paid for through funding that I get. If I lose the MA, I lose all of that. And that includes any staff that I have working for me as well. So I just hate the way everything's going. I mean, we should not have to go through these struggles. They're just going to make things even harder for people with disabilities. I mean, I was in Annapolis twice this year fighting for the DDA budget. They wanted to knock out 22% of that budget. We were able to get most of it put back in. The portion that they haven't decided on yet is the portion that's going to come out in the year of 26. But because of the hard advocacy I did for that, we were able to get part of that put back in. But we don't know how long it's going to stay there and what's going to happen from this point forward. But if DDA loses much of their budget, it's going to affect the clients they serve. And people with disabilities are already struggling to make ends meet. The part-time job that I have doesn't even pay me enough to make ends meet. I work less than 10 hours a week. And it hasn't been easy. And I've had to watch every penny. Of course, we all do, but it's even harder for people with disabilities. If these budget cuts come down against medical assistance, Medicare, Social Security, the SNAP program, the housing assistance, the rental assistance, whatever, that is drastically going to hurt people with disabilities. You think the homeless situation is bad now? It's only going to get worse unless we do something about these budget cuts.
Thank you so much, Marlene, for giving your powerful testimony to us. It really
Thank
helps put things into perspective. If we can all, even though we're all mute, if you could all just give a clap for Marlene or give your reaction, your hearts or whatever on the screen. Thank you so much. Okay, we're now going to move into the report feedback, and Matthew Stokes Retta Ball is one of our state coordinators is going to be reviewing that and presenting that with you.
Thank you, Michael. Hard stuff to follow here. I mean, we're in really dire times, and as they said, mean things happening in this land, no doubt. And it's real, but there's no backing out of this. This is all real. It's happening in real time. So our faith traditions provide a firm foundation upon which to stand against the divide and conquer strategies of extremists. We believe in a moral agenda that stands against systemic racism, labor exploitation, poverty, xenophobia, and any attempt to promote hate towards any members of the human family. We are thus deeply disturbed by the Trump Republican agenda, MAGA as they say, which is focused on cutting programs for the poor to give tax cuts to the wealthy and big corporations and more money for the war machine and mass deportations. Here we summarize a longer report of the high moral stakes of this debate. Next slide. How do I click here? Good, next slide. Cuts to social safety net, healthcare, and housing. President Trump and Elon Musk threatened 1.5 to 2 trillion in spending, cutting Medicaid by $8 billion. This will impact 30 million people to lose coverage. These range from the elderly to children, disabled and otherwise. Cut food stamps by 230 billion over 10 years. That's 40 million people impacted, including at least 17 million children. Cutting Head Start. There's 650,000 poor and low-income children removed from this child care. Cut federal and rental assistance, impacting over 5 million households. Cuts to Social Security, 68 million affected. My sister just had a delay on her Social Security, which freaked her out enormously, but it did come through eventually. Privatizing of Medicare, 61 million affected. This is a long time thing that started with George W. Bush. They call it Medicare Advantage. If you got it, lose it. and imposing work requirements for Medicaid, SNAP, and TANF, the temporary assistance for needy families. Major tax giveaways to the rich and big corporations. 2017, Trump's tax giveaways to the wealthy helped create the billionaire class. Literally, helped create that. The enormous cuts that they gave to them is astronomical. And then we have space programs. Individuals have their own space programs. New proposals call for 4.5 trillion in tax cuts, primarily for the wealthy. Most families, tax savings equals 300 per year, while the 0.1% reap over 300,000 per year. Corporate tax rate cut from 35% to 21% in 2017, now proposing a 15%, which equals $1.5 trillion giveaway. Corporations promised to use these tax breaks to raise wages. Ooh, never happened. Never happened. Again, mean things happening in this land. Instead, we need a return to the Biden expand child tax credit, which reduced child poverty by a rate of 50%. That was overnight. Halting or reversing progress on employment, real wages, and labor rights. No support for raising the minimum wage. We're still stuck at 7.25. You can't live on that. Slashing of the federal workforce, a major blow to Black workers, which represents 18% of the federal workers. Tariffs, get me started. Being randomly imposed on our trade partners, which he has now, I don't know, not enough time, will increase U.S. inflation dramatically. They're saying, on an average, this is going to cost every household at least, this was months ago, they said it's going to cost at least $3,000 per household, the imposition of these tariffs. Getting the National Labor Relations Board, yeah. I'm union, there's many people that are, ending and weakening their capacity to defend workers' rights. This is real. Harming immigrants with mass deportations and detentions. We're all immigrants, all right? Get over it. Trump promises to deport 11 million undocumented people, along with people that are legal and otherwise. We heard that with the gentleman from Maryland who is stuck in El Salvador. Issued executive orders ending order against deporting in schools, hospitals, and churches to end birthright citizenship. So they can go in wherever they want. Schools, hospitals, churches, and just yank you out of position. This is fascism, and it's this, we are here. 1 million with temporary legal statuses now threatened with deportation. A friend of mine, they're sweating bullets. I mean, they're both, one works for NASA. Her husband works for NASA, and she's a teacher. They're both very, very concerned about this. Deporting 8.3 million people could raise consumer prices by 9%. These are people, they contribute to our economy. During February 2025, 41% of immigrant detained had no criminal records, all right? And they've been chucked. Next. There we go. War machine and deportations. Funded at everyone's expense, Republicans will add $150 billion in new Pentagon spending and $175 billion on mass deportations and detentions. The Senate's proposal of $86 billion per year, health insurance for 4 million children, expanding Head Start enrollment to 3.6 million children, and provide public housing to 3.9 million families evicted each year. The Pentagon and war budget already accounts for over half of our annual discretionary spending. Use of military facility, mass deportations while threatening military takeover of Gaza Strip. Yeah, they've got plans for Trump land there. Greenland, take whatever we need, and Panama. Don't forget Canada. How this impacts you. policy impacts on your life and community. These are real numbers, all right? The percentage of individuals in Maryland, District of Columbia, it's 21% of the population in Maryland under Medicaid. 34% in District of Columbia. Medicaid cut as percentage of household income for the poorest 20%. 5.6% in Maryland, 10% in the District of Columbia. SNAP, food stamps. Total enrollees, 688,000. In Maryland, we have 141,000. These are things that are just going to cut off, just willy-nilly. I don't, who needs it, right? It's 11% in Maryland. It's 20% in DC. And Head Start, funded enrollment is 8,000, well, call it 9,000, 8.9 there, and in Maryland, and 2,200 in District of Columbia. These are all major, major impacts. And next.
Thank you, Matthew. We'll go back to Pastor T now.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Yes. 20 seconds on the war machine before I get to my next slide. Understand that they want to increase defense spending by $150 billion, taking it to almost $1 trillion a year. We already were outspending the next 25 countries in the world combined, 23 of whom are our allies. And yet they want to keep throwing money at the defense spending rather than serving e pluribus unum, we the people. The Medicaid breakdown is important because folks need to understand that they have skin in the game. If you look at the numbers, you'll see there that the numbers for those ages 0 to 64 enrolled in Medicaid in 2023, 24 million or 39% were white, 11.2 million, 19% African American, 18 million, 30% Asian. The way that it is characterized and shared with the public, they want to make it seem as though we want to keep these brown people from not taking care of themselves and supporting themselves on government money, which is actually what rich people are doing, supporting themselves on our tax dollars. And so we need to help our white cousins understand that almost 4 in 10 of people receiving Medicaid are them. So that when the government is coming for us, it's coming for everybody, and they need to understand that. Similarly with SNAP benefits, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise formerly known as food stamps. Again, they would have you think that it is basically a black and brown thing, but you look at the numbers. In 2022, the ethnic and racial distribution of households, 38% were white, 7.8 million, 25% African American, 5.2 million, 12% Latino, 2.5 million, 4% Asian, 1% Native American. But again, the story that they're telling is these people of color are getting a free ride on our government while they're launching a free ride into space on their government contracts and their private space programs. And they expect us to pay for it and suffer for it. There's some mean things that are happening in this land. Hopefully, because of you, we will resist and push back and prevent it. Thank you.
I believe this is back to you, Matthew.
And here we go. You will pay for tax cuts for the rich. This is seems to be their underlying message or goal. I don't know. What is their end game? It's hard to figure this out. It's all quite frightening. Extending Trump's first term tax cuts will cost $4 trillion over 4 years. To cover that loss requires cuts to federal programs and income. There's no income from tariffs, but defense spending will be untouched and in fact increased. The result is that the richest 1% pockets $34,000 per year in savings. For the bottom half of Americans, it's $1 a day. Add in the cost to consumers of tariffs, the bottom 50% of Americans will get a tax hike between $800 to $1,500. And as I said before, already it's determined that these tariffs that are being imposed are going to cost individual households upwards of $3,000 a year. And that's just a starting number. Meanwhile, suffer the little children. Republicans propose saving $28 billion for tax cuts by cutting the child tax credit. The extended tax credit cut during COVID cut child poverty in half. Those are real numbers. Those are real numbers. It's just Biden administration had the extended child tax credit during the period of COVID and it cut child poverty in half. How often do you see that? And they're reversing this. They're just throwing everything out. So the other side of it is, and we all need to understand that, they keep tossing this word around, fascism. There was a study that was done during the Nuremberg trials, psychologists trying to analyze what the hell is a Nazi? What is it? What is the underlying, what is the continuum? What is constant between, what defines a Nazi? The most prominent thing that they could find that was distinguished them as being different from everybody else was they had absolutely no empathy. They had no regard for anything else or anybody else except for themselves. They had no concern for anybody else's well-being, no empathy. And that's where we are.
Thank you, Matthew. And certainly hope that everyone here has the empathy we need, because that's what we need to build on, the empathy, so we can raise empathy above vitriol. And now turn it back over to Rachel.
Yes, and I'm here to say people are fighting back. What we are facing has devastating and deadly impacts, but I know each and every one of us, we're here because we are wanting to strategically engage. And just this last Saturday, millions of people filled the streets in big cities and on main streets of rural communities in blue, red, and purple districts, all saying to Trump, Elon Musk, and the Republicans, hands off our government. Then there's the Tesla takedown protests that are growing twofold every week. The Rockville Tesla takedown actually got a shout out recently by Rachel Maddow. We know that the Republicans are being hammered in their local town halls to the point now that they have all been instructed not to host anymore. We have Elise Stefanik, who has been yanked from the UN back to defend her Republican congressional seat. The cracks are showing, and we are starting to get to see them back on their heels. So we can't let up. So let's go to the next slide, and we're going to get into our discussions. Wonderful. So we're going to head into our breakouts to discuss what actions we think we should take next. Do we ride out the storm, keep our heads down, and wait to vote in 2026 and 2028 when we hope people will be so disgusted that they'll vote Trump out? We say, hell no. We are not going to sit back and watch while millions of our neighbors go hungry from the cuts to SNAP and die without their Medicaid. If we still want there to be a constitutional republic 6 months from now or a year from now, we must respond with every ounce of resistance we have now. So the question to discuss in these breakouts is, what do we have to do to win? What actions will get us there? So please be prepared to report back. Right now, Mike is actually going to be moving everyone into these breakout rooms. You might see something come up on your screen just to say it's okay to move you into those, but you'll get about 10 minutes to discuss. Wonderful. Okay, I think we're all back now. I was one of the scribes and I was writing down as quickly as I could, but even our group, we couldn't quite get to the end. So we welcome you all back very soon to have even more discussion on this. Though we do want to go ahead and have a little bit report back from each group, just so that we can kind of work these into the actions that we are doing. So I actually don't mind just sharing quickly because I was the person tasked with that in my group. And then I've just asked if one person per group could kind of be prepared to do your report backs. I'll start passing it down the line. But our group, we're chock full of lots of great ideas. We really felt passionate, though, that right now in-person visits to our congressional members is critical. Of course, also calling. There's kind of a switchboard that makes it very easy to call all of your elected officials, which is something that can be easily found online. There was also an idea of really needing to target our messages to the different parts of our coalition, having a different message for those of us and our neighbors who are experiencing poverty, having a different message for our congressional members, really kind of thinking about also the self-interest of each different group and what message might kind of link into that. We really liked how the hands-off marches and rallies this last Saturday had, for instance, Jamie Raskin was speaking. So we're kind of thinking about how can we pull in some more of our congressional members just to be advocates for this work. There was also an idea of how we can better get connections, like physical connections and understanding between our neighbors who have high income and who have very low income. We also were talking about how we need to get out onto the streets and be in spaces with those that we say we're standing in solidarity with. So making sure we're actually in spaces with our LGBTQ plus community members, also our immigrant community members. We discussed some ideas of boycotts. And we also felt that in our messaging, we need to focus on the heart, not just the legal side of our work. There were some ideas of even like, we could go to like Warren Buffett and get some money for some big posters that we could plaster all across this nation that tells the heart of the story, right? Not just kind of the numbers that these attacks are coming in. We really do feel that we would love to see the media show a better representation of the immigration situation. We know that these are not criminals. These are our wonderful neighbors who are contributing to our community every day. We also would like to see a better history of immigration described in our media, really talking about how there's been forced, enslavements, and how we have really taken advantage of so many individuals over our history. So we had many more that were just coming out. So I can't wait to meet back up with my group at another time, but I'll stop there for now. Okay, I'd love to pass it to the next group.
Okay, for my group, did any of the people I asked want to do it? If not, we can have Matthew report back and try to keep it to about a minute. Anybody? Matthew, you just want to go ahead?
Sure. I mean, the discussion was primarily about coalitions of groups, bringing other groups together to participate in this process. And that's really, I think, key to a lot of this is, there's so many things going on, so many different organizations out there kind of banging on the same drum, or at least close at it. And we just have to accept that we are doing that, for one, but also to engage with them. And whenever there's something happening, to enroll them into the process of whatever it is that's going on. It's not just our group or their group or group B or great. It just, when you start looking at the number of people that are coming out and the number of groups that are just starting up, this 50501, they just started in February. And it's now, it's a national group. This is like 20-year-olds. It's like, I talked to one of them and she said there was 20 of us that kicked this thing off. And they're on fire. And that's what we need to see. That's where it needs to go. There's a comedian out of North Carolina, Cliff Cash, he's again just on fire. Just he's spending all of his money, all of his time pushing back against what is now going on. I was with him at I ran into him accidentally at the veterans group where there were like 1,500 people. And from there, he went 3 days of protests, 4 or 5 hours for each of these protests. We went to yell at Fox and CNN and tell them to do their job, report, there's a lot going on, and we're all in this together.
Thank you, Matthew. Last group, please. Again, try to keep it to about a minute. We got a list of things we want to share with you.
Well, we had a lot. I mean, we did have 2 people on from DC and 1 person from Annapolis, but it was interesting to hear from DC from both Robin and Angela. And that situation is very dire. But certainly from the discussion we had, it is very clear that we don't intend to sit this one out. We're not going to wait on somebody to come in and fix anything. We have to get out. We have to build, our coalition. We have to move into the streets. We have to look at opportunities to confront legislators, and both, I think it was Robin who said that she really, with the DC thing, that you don't have to live in DC, but you certainly can call up and go protest at your congressperson's office, because they are the ones that are going to determine whether DC has autonomy or whether DC is being held hostage, right? And that's what it is. So I think it was very clear in our group that people want to act, they want to get in the streets, they want to take action. We're not about to just sit back and let something roll over us.
Love it. Absolutely. Let us bring all of these actions into our daily lives, and certainly the Poor People's Campaign will integrate them into our work as well. We've made note of all of these, so thank you. I also want to highlight some other additional next steps. So the Poor People's Campaign will be launching a massive national call your legislator effort, which is going to be starting in this next week. So please just watch your email. We will be emailing you about how to engage, and it's going to be about how we can stop these cuts to Medicaid, SNAP, and HUD, and other critical programs. We also will be hosting the Edmondson Village Rise Up, a rally of dissent in Baltimore on April 26th. Each Saturday, of course, we also wanted to highlight that the Tesla takedown rallies are taking place. You can find a location near you at the address that's shared on your screen. We'll also send out this recording in the slides. And then there is the fight for rent stabilization in Rockville. We do need more people to rally around that issue to ensure that it will pass. I'll just quickly say, if you've already been participating in some of these actions, like you've been attending the Hands Off rally or any other, going and talking to your elected official, let's just do fists up. Or if you're not able to do that, a little heart or anything in your screen, just to see who, that we've been active. I think it's great to build off each other. Hopefully we'll be seeing each other in these events soon. And really, most importantly, we just want to encourage you that I know many of you are already connected to the Poor People's Campaign, but if there's any who are not connected to us or another group, we just encourage you to join whatever group speaks to you, because right now we must organize together. We welcome you at the Maryland Poor People's Campaign or the DC Poor People's Campaign. In Maryland, we'll be hosting statewide monthly meetings. And as you can see, many ways to support there. All the links are there. And of course, donating as we're all able helps organizations like ours continue on. So we're gonna have just a few final words here, but I just wanna say, let's go out and organize. And I'm gonna pass it to Mike to end us in the way we always end as Poor People's Campaign, with our chant.
I do want to highlight the one action there for CASA, the Values Act, because today is the last day of the Maryland legislature, so that it's going through midnight. So if you can keep pushing CASA's post through midnight, that really, everybody wants it, not just CASA, but everybody. Maryland PPC supports it and everything. Yes, we want to do that chant. I first wanted to offer one of our DC PPC folks the chance to lead us out on that chant if they'd like. If any of you would like to, otherwise I will do it.
Could I call on my friend Angie? Angie, could you lead us out with Forward Together? You're going to say that, and we're going to say not one step back.
Okay. Everybody clear your head. Listen. Forward together.
Not
one step
back. Again?
Yep.
Forward together.
Not one step
back.
One step back.
Final time.
Forward together.
Not
Not
one step back.
back.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.